Not everyone is going to have a magical weapon at level 7, but I am a very stingy person when it comes to magical items. So
yeah, if my DM hasn't given me a magical weapon by level 5, I'll take care of that myself. Right? I'll dip Forge Cleric or something.
Oh, I thought you were going to beat up your DM.
You won't give me a magical weapon. I'll give myself a magical weapon.
That sounded
okay.
Yeah,
that's the civil kind of passive way to do it. You can also just beat up your DM.
Welcome to Monsters Multiclass, your Dungeons & Dragons fix. I'm Kevin Odie.
I'm Jared Bornigal.
And I'm Will Melton.
And we'll be hanging out with you for a while to talk about anything and everything D&D related. On this episode, we have a special guest, Chris Honkala, otherwise known as Treantmonk, who will be helping us take a look at the Artificer Paladin, and then the Rakshasa from the Monster Manual. So pull up a chair and stick around for a while.
All right, so before we get into things, I'd like to say welcome back, Chris. Though this is the first time people are hearing him on our show. We recorded an episode last week, and due to recording difficulties, had to scrap it. So we get to have another awesome conversation with you, Chris, and we're all really excited. But for the people who might not know who you are, what you do, I'll give you the floor for a minute just to talk about that.
Yeah, so I am mainly known as an optimizer, and I've been doing guides for classes for different systems up to 5th edition and 5th edition. Now I do that on a YouTube channel. It's called Treantmonk's Temple. And we do builds for classes, not all that different from what you guys do, but a little more focused on the mechanics and making an effective build over a set number of levels. We also dissect classes, races, spells. I do a lot of spell analysis. And I can be found at Treantmonk's Temple on YouTube. I have a Discord community called the Treantmonk's Temple. And you can also find me on Twitter at Chris Honkala.
Cool. Yeah, I know we're all really excited to have you here. We all really heavily relied on your guides, especially when we first started playing 5th edition, like your God Wizard guide. I had that one thing when I made a wizard. I had that thing almost memorized at one point. So this was always like a big goal to have. Oh man, we should have Treantmonk on the podcast someday. That would be cool.
And here we are, made our dreams come true. All right, so today we're going to talk about the Artificer Paladin multiclass. The Artificer is the newest class of the bunch. It is the Tinkerer, an intelligence-based half-caster whose specialty is making magical items. It's a 13 intelligence requirement to multiclass into this one. And then the Paladin is a warrior on a mission. Their oath grants them strength and the ability to smite, which is using their spell slots to just do increased damage on their melee attacks. Requirements to multiclass into are 13 strength and 13 charisma. Will, what are your first thoughts on the Artificer Paladin?
First thoughts. All right. What we got, I don't know. So I always have you know how I feel about paladins. I kind of stereotype them as big dumb dummies. So the combination with Artificer, initially seems, I don't know. But I think there's definitely a lot of potential here to make a weird twist on paladins. I think there's a lot of, third-party inspiration you could take to get that kind of thing going.
Okay, so maybe the flavor's there, but the mechanics might be a little tough.
Who knows? I didn't check.
Well, I know somebody did. Chris, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, this is not an easy multi-class, and it's definitely not an intuitive one. When you have a paladin that's got the strength and charisma requirements for multi-classing, ideally you would want to multi-class with something else that needs those same things. And the Artificer, of course, needs intelligence, which normally a paladin is going to dump, right? So now they actually not only need to have a 13 intelligence just to qualify, but if they want to get anything out of Artificer, they probably want more than that. And it is going to definitely restrict what races you can choose, and it is definitely going to spread out. And some of the ability scores you maybe wanted to start with 16, you're going to have to settle for a 14. That said, it can be done. I'm not sure there's a huge amount of advantages to going Artificer over, say, Sorcerer mechanically, unless you're going with more levels of Artificer and getting into more of their neat stuff that comes later. But as a 1-level dip, it really doesn't make a lot of sense for a Paladin to dip Artificer. But if you are doing more Artificer and less Paladin, then maybe it makes a little more sense. Especially if you're primarily Artificer, then I can really see maybe going into Paladin for a couple levels.
Yeah, I definitely think that when you look at like classes like the Battlesmith, where they're melee focused anyways, if you have the stats for some reason, or you just really want to go on this path, 2-level dip into Paladin for any martial class is going to be helpful, especially one that has spell slots otherwise. So you can still get those smites off, and you're not really holding yourself back as much as maybe going into fighter. But again, having both of those stat requirements is going to be quite difficult, I think. Kevin, any other additional thoughts?
Yeah, so I want to love this one so much. I love the image of it, like a techno paladin. They're the fist of a god, and they use technology to boost the god's will, and it's fueled by divine power, or take the god out of it, and it's just, they're so dedicated to an oath, like their oath of vengeance. They could take whatever advantage they can through technology and filling it and powering it through like their pure devotion to something. And I think it could be really cool and like kind of more technology divine powered smites and healing and stuff like that. But yeah, mechanically, I think most of the combinations just completely fall flat. I came up with one good option, and even that's iffy.
Well, perfect. Honestly, let's start there. What combination have you thought of?
Mainly being Battlesmith with a 2-level dip into Paladin. Kind of was already that actually.
Perfect. Yeah.
That's what I was thinking as well, because you can get away then with a 13 strength, and you have 14 dexterity. You'll be fine for your medium armor, and you can focus entirely on intelligence. I can totally see doing it that way.
Yeah, which
the one thing I don't love about that mix is that the Artificer is a half caster, which means they don't get any more spell slots than a Paladin would get. So, a lot of the times when we multiclass that 2-level of Paladin with a spellcaster, it's to take advantage of additional spell slots, which with an Artificer, we're not going to get.
Yeah, I think the one thing that you do get out of this, and this is ignoring, again, the stat requirements, is you get a use for your bonus action. I don't think that Paladins generally use their bonus action much, besides setting up for smites, like their Burning or Searing Smite or Thunderous Smite. I don't remember what they're called, but they have like their specific smites that take a bonus action to set up. I don't think those get used too much, because usually it's better to just go with a normal smite. At least with the Artificer, if you're going Battlesmith, then you do have your... I can't remember the name of it. I already forgot.
Steel Defender.
Thank you, Will. Your Steel Defender. Or if you end up going Artillerist, which I kind of have put some thought into. I mean, that really is a good Artificer subclass, and you're using your bonus action almost every single turn, as long as you're willing to expend the spell slots to have your Eldritch Cannon up all the time.
Yeah, I would say that there are certain bonus actions that Paladins do use. The one kind of exception to what are normally weaker choices for smite spells is Wrathful Smite, which is actually a very good smite spell. It requires a bonus action. A lot of Paladins might want to use Shield of Faith, which is also a bonus action. And then there are certain Paladins, like if I think of the Oath of Vengeance, it requires a bonus action for his Vow of Enmity, right, to set up advantage. So it's not like Paladins don't have anything to do with their bonus action, but they certainly aren't going to be using it every turn.
Right, and if you did end up going this route, I could very well see, for example, we're talking about the Wrathful Smite, is that really going to be better when you're spending a spell slot than the 2d8 that you might get from the Force Ballista every single turn.
Yeah, if I was going to go with the Artillerist, and I thought about that too, and I thought, then I might consider going primarily Paladin, just to get 3 levels of Artificer and go into Artillerist. Then I would go Artillerist, and I would take the Protector Cannon.
I had that thought too. I really like the idea of making it a Paladin Artificer that's just like extremely dedicated to protection, and it's definitely not going to be the most optimized. We had a whole conversation about how the Protector Cannon it really isn't that great, and it doesn't scale super well, but it's still something.
I so disagree with you.
All right.
Hard disagree. You're adding those temporary hit points every turn. to your entire party, you can just take area of effect damage and completely wipe it out. And the next turn, you're back up to full with temporary hit points. That every turn temporary hit points, that's like having a damage resistance of 10 every round. I've seen it in action multiple times, and I've always been incredibly impressed with it. I mean, think about this. Do you consider Inspiring Leader to be a good feat? Because that's...
Not really.
Not really? Okay, so how many extra hit points would a 20 hit point character need for you to think it be impressive?
What's the details of Inspiring Leader?
It provides temporary hit points equal to 10 plus your charisma bonus.
Okay, so max of 15, 10 hit points.
Does it add level? I'm trying to remember. If
it's
level.
your level plus your charisma modifier.
Oh, your level plus your charisma modifier. Sorry.
Okay.
So max 25 at the highest.
Yeah. Which is okay, but for a feat, when you compare it to something like Grey Weapon Master, Sentinel, Warcaster, Polearm Master, I don't know if I would quite say it competes.
Let me put it a different way. Do you think Barbarian with Rage, all those extra hit points, is an advantage? A significant advantage?
Yes.
Yes, of course.
Okay, so let's consider a third level Barbarian. How many hit points are you going to have? 12 from first level, 7 from the next 2 levels. So that's, 26 plus the Constitution modifier. Let's say plus 3. So you might have 35 hit points. Raged for double that. You might be able to take 70 hit points at level 3. That's pretty good. Now let's consider an average adventuring day. Maybe you're in 4 combats, 4 rounds each. Protector Cannon, let's say it's doing 10. And to, let's say only one party member is getting damaged. So that's 160 extra hit points.
I think when we talked about this, and like to clarify what we really meant, the conclusion was a little impractical on our parts. It doesn't scale that well in some contexts. Like a level 20 character, these numbers are not as impressive.
I agree that the scaling isn't great. But I do think certainly at the levels that see the most play, it's enough that it's going to make a massive difference. Like, not just noticeable, but like DM is frustrated kind of difference.
Definitely. And especially if you're in a situation where your DM is throwing multiple sources of damage at you, much more than they are throwing huge sources of damage at you.
Yeah.
You know?
For sure. No, there's definitely uses for it. Couple things to keep in mind, though. It is only within 10 feet. So the chances that maybe other tables are different. I know at our table it is really rare that our party is all within 10 feet of each other. We're usually super spread out. If we are within 10 feet, then the DM, Jared, loves to punish us with some terrible AoE.
You can move and then use it, right? So if Bob is wounded, you move by Bob and set it off, right? And you don't even necessarily need to be in the effect if you weren't damaged. The only time you really need multiple party members to be in the effect is if multiple party members took damage in the last round. And in that case, you're getting double the effect, at least, from the temporary hit points. But if it's one person, then you're automatically, there's no problem, right? And then it's just those extra hit points it's like healing every round for free. But it's actually better than healing. Temporary hit points are better than healing.
I can actually get behind this. This adds a tactical element that I think could be totally missed if you aren't doing this as a run around the battlefield healing people. If you're just like, if the tank sits there just taking damage while all the casters hide and they get blasted by other stuff, it doesn't do anything. But if you bring it to them, it would definitely change the way things are played at the table.
That's fair. Now, the one thing that I will, I guess, come at with a counter here is that it is pretty easy to destroy. So I would expect that if this was becoming a problem, it's at least simple enough for the DM to say, all right, these creatures are intelligent. They see that this thing is healing you every single round. They're going to focus their attention on it, which still gives a benefit because that means there's attacks that aren't going to you. And it doesn't have horrible hit points if you're going into Artificer. If we're talking about a 3-level dip, it's not that great. AC of 18 and then 15 HP. Probably going to get destroyed in 1 or 2 hits, but that's still 1 or 2 hits that aren't going to your party.
And again, if we are comparing the Protector Cannon to the other cannons,
right,
any of those cannons might be attacked. The Protector Cannon is the hardest of those to destroy because it also gets its own temporary hit points.
It does say a creature of your choice. Is it considered a creature? I don't think it is.
I believe it says
Nah,
including itself. Let me double check that, but I'm pretty certain it gets the temporary hit points as well.
It doesn't specifically say including itself.
Oh,
and
no,
in
it
the
does.
flavor text above, it says it's a magical object.
No. It says the cannon emits a burst of positive energy that grants itself and each creature of your
you're right,
choice
never
within
mind.
10 feet. You know what? I have missed that. That is pretty useful.
Yeah.
That would be pretty big.
Okay.
And we did conclude you cannot wear it like a hat.
Why not? You can make it tiny, can't you?
Yeah, I can't see why not.
No, this was my
You get
idea,
the
and they're
whole
like,
bit.
no, that's going to break the game. You can't just have it right on your head the entire time. I'm like, that's stupid.
Yeah.
If you can have a tiny creature stand on your head, I can't see why you can't have a tiny object on your head.
You need a hand to operate it, is basically what it's saying. If it's tiny, that thing that you're holding, your hand needs to operate it.
Except you don't need your hand to operate it. If it has legs, you don't need a hand to operate it.
See,
Right, so it's kind of the
specific
trade-off.
beats general, and they hate
So
fun.
it
Chris.
has legs and it sits on your head.
This is a pretty wide and powerful consensus, in my opinion, and I vote that you should be able to allow it to ride on your head.
I don't see any issue with that.
All right.
It should be able to ride another, I guess, technically speaking, the riding rules require you to be a creature, but, reason would suggest.
That's fine. It can move anyways, so it's really not changing that much. I guess it can only move 15 feet though as part of its bonus action. So this is giving it just more movement if you let it ride on your head, and you're limiting where it is going to be because it's always going to be on the same person, which once again could make the DM kind of make it easier to attack it, and that really probably only works for the protector and flamethrower. I feel like the force ballista, you're going to be better off being 60 feet away from it to operate it and letting it be really far out of the combat.
Probably.
You don't want a force ballista on your head, or you do. I don't know, but it seems to be getting rid of its major draw is the fact that it can be out of combat. So with that idea of using the protector cannon, I liked the Oath of Redemption, which definitely is not the most powerful paladin subclass in my opinion, though it is pretty good. And when you're going for that type of protector idea, I think it's absolutely perfect. Really though, trying to justify why a paladin would go into Artificer, I don't know. I guess that can kind of depend. I think it's pretty easy personally because, as we've talked about before, Artificer is just like a hobby almost, where you just start picking up the technical arcane information, and you just think that that's fun. So I really like the idea of just a paladin who realizes hey, I can't be in every place at once. So I either want to go in that battlesmith and start using your steel defender, or go into that artillerist and use that protector cannon.
Yeah, it's pretty easy to explain. I think you're a paladin and you decide you're going to be Batman.
It always devolves to Batman.
It does.
I say it's the endless quest in the D&D community of how to make Batman. I think the Artificer reignited
There you go,
that.
Paladin Artificer.
Yeah.
I see it. Oath of Vengeance, obviously.
It always ends up falling flat.
Yeah.
There's always major aspects mixing. Batman could do too much to be a balanced D&D
Yeah,
game.
he's the main superhero character of his own series. Not exactly the best attitude to go into a D&D game with.
One thing on the Steel Defender, if you're going mainly Paladin, I don't think a 3-level dip to Battlesmith is worth it, because the Steel Defender is going to really fall behind. Because everything about that boosts based on your Artificer level. Its health is your Constitution plus your Intelligence plus 5 times your level in the Artificer class. So if you only go 3-level dips, it's basically permanently at 20 HP. Which, at first, okay. If you're a level 5 Paladin, or level 5, 2 Paladin, 3 Artificer, and go the rest in Paladin, okay. But it's going to really kind of quickly start falling. Its usefulness, I feel, it start falling away. At that point, I'd rather go Artillerist and do the Protector thing, or something like that. And then also, if you're mainly Paladin, I think the other stuff you get from being a Battlesmith, it just feels kind of wasted. You get proficiency of martial weapons. You already have that. You could use your Intelligence modifier for attacks and damage rolls, but if you're mainly Paladin, your Intelligence is probably the weakest out of those 3 stats. Anyways, Yeah, if you keep going, like extra attack at 5th, again, Paladins get that. You end up just with a lot of redundancies.
Yeah, I think if you're going Battlesmith build-wise, you're much better off doing just the 2-level dip in Paladin and going primarily Battlesmith. Yeah. I could totally see Artillerist instead if you wanted to go primarily Paladin. And then I can see no build, as usual, that works for Alchemist.
I want to like it. I really do.
Just a pure alchemist, I think, could be okay. I think the experimental elixirs could kind of be fun. A lot of people I know don't like that sort of randomness in their class builds, but I always do.
They're just not very good.
Spell slot.
That's my issue. I don't mind the randomness, but they're not good enough. A straight alchemist is actually just horrible.
You think?
Oh yeah. Because
I think some are good.
So what do you do in combat?
As an alchemist, support people
ranged
emotionally.
damage dealer.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's about it. That's but not as good as a bard.
It's support with some damage, magical damage, cantrip damage, elemental damage, that sort of stuff, because they get boosts to that.
Cantrip damage is what other spellcasters do when they have nothing good to do.
I mean, you also do have then your full list of Artificer spells. Yeah. And then some of the experimental elixirs could be good in certain situations, or like Resilience plus 1 AC. Always nice for like free.
But you're not doing that during... I would never take an action in combat to drink an elixir to get a +1 armor class. Right? I might use a bonus action to get a +2 armor class, but an action to get +1 armor class, I'm never doing during combat. And yeah, in combat, essentially they have cantrips, and they are as good a caster as a ranger, or a paladin. They're not a real caster. So you're really doing, and you don't have a lot of slots, and you really end up doing cantrips, right? And you're not like a warlock where your cantrips are really good. You get 1 die extra on a cantrip. That really makes so little difference when you punch out the numbers. These things are just nowhere near. It's almost not worth using the cantrip at all. You might as well do the help action to somebody who can do something.
Isn't the die your intelligence modifier? Or not the die, the bonus.
Yes. Sorry. That's right. Intelligence modifier bonus. So probably worse than a die.
I mean, if you're going alchemist, it's going to be +5. Like if you
eventually
multi-class.
Not for a while.
Yeah.
It's your DM would have to scale combat around it, I would say.
It is by far mechanically the weakest of the artificers, and one of the weakest things in the game. A little better than a monk, maybe.
Treantmonk.
I guess I still see it. It's more about
monks.
More out of combat utility than the artillerist or battlesmith gets. Be able to cast, lesser restoration. It's experimental elixirs could start healing, greater restoration later on. I know that gets higher and stuff like that. And then you still have all the artificer stuff in the background of.
Yeah, I really dislike the lesser restoration ability actually, because and it's not that I don't think lesser restoration is a decent spell, but it is a spell that you never need until you need it. And it's either useless or useful, and a lot of the time it's useless. And the amount of times you need to cast Lesser Restoration on a typical adventuring day might be once. So being able to do it a number of times equal to the intelligence modifier just means you're going to have an ability that you're not going to be able to use, and that feels bad.
Yeah, I mean, especially, again, comparing it to the Battlesmith's level 9, which is the Arcane Jolt, which just lets you do like the extra damage up to your intelligence modifier. That's going to be extremely useful up to your intelligence modifier every single time. And
the artillerist gets a good level 9 as well. It's
right.
Just I don't like the alchemist pretty much from beginning to end.
That's fair. The one thing that I do like about it though still is I really like the flavor. And that's why I was saying I want to like it so bad, just because I love the idea of the mad scientist artificer. And I think that this fits much more than the, I'll say, tactician of the artillerist or battlesmith. But it just, it just falls flat mechanically.
Yeah. If you want to play a fun alchemist, you could always play Pathfinder.
I don't know if anybody's played this game, but it's kind of what it kind of reminds me of is actually one of the heroes from Darkest Dungeon is called the Antiquarian, and people who are new to the game play this character. It's like you have a party of heroes that have all special abilities. You play this game and you're like, what the fuck is wrong with this character? Because it does maybe like a third of the damage of everybody else, a third the healing of everybody else. It's garbage. It's worthless. Because it doesn't tell you that it doubles the gold you get in old dungeons. So it's like this weird add-on to your party that doesn't seem useful in combat, but like the alchemist can bring magic items. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, again, any artificer brings magic items.
Yeah, it's kind of
where that falls apart.
You have to like go into it with a mentality of I want to be less involved in combat. I don't know.
Yeah. And again, I would hate an ability where you give up being effective in combat so that you double the gold in a dungeon. That just seems really boring.
Yeah, no, I'd imagine it'd be
sure.
so not fun. If you're like playing a single player game where that's just one of the characters, totally fine. If that's like 6 hours of your week is sitting there doubling people's gold.
Yeah, Darkest Dungeon is a video game where you control the whole party, so you can choose to just slot that one in.
Yeah.
That's why it works there. Definitely not in D&D. That would be terrible. I'm going to play the character that's completely passive, but just boost everyone else by existing.
Dude, do you just not want to play D&D? It's like, how did you tell?
So what you're saying is there is the type of player that it is useful for. The one who just wants to sit there and doesn't want to contribute at all. And you're like, I can't believe I invited this person to my party. We're really good friends in real life, but, they're horrible at this game. Just give him that character. That way you don't expect anything of him, but maybe you get some extra gold out of it.
Well, there would be a small selection of the D&D community that would claim it's the best just because they like to, to self-sabotage so that, they can claim that's better role-playing.
Right.
Max minning?
Yeah.
Max minning. Yeah, either way, I completely get what you're saying about Alchemist. I love the flavor of it. I'm not as turned off by the different elixirs, but I mean, you do bring up a good point. Like, it is a whole action. You get +1 bonus to AC. I think it's nice to be able to just kind of for free get flight or the boldness one, kind of like a quick blaster, stuff like that. But yeah, definitely as a paladin, I don't see a big benefit in doing that. Giving up 3 paladin levels to get to alchemist, I don't see that fitting at all.
No, just no. Wouldn't do it.
Yeah. And in terms of just some base artificer stuff, there are definitely some good infusions that would work well as a paladin. And of course, you could argue you could just be straight paladin and then some straight artificer, and then they just give you these. But if there's no artificer, to be able to get them yourself, but like a radiant weapon, you can make a weapon that's +1, it's magical, it can deal radiant damage, and as I think it was a bonus action, you could blind people. Repulsion shield, paladins are often sword and board, so shield knock people 15 feet back, obviously just +1 to armor and things like that. So it could be kind of nice to be able to just boost yourself up.
Now, the thing about both those things is they're both level 6, I believe.
Correct.
So you would have to invest significantly further into Artificer in order to get advantage from those. But I am a fan of the Repulsion Shield for sure.
I don't remember that one.
Yeah, but even right away, let's see, I'm pulling them up. Yeah, like enhanced defense, enhanced weapon. You could get those right away. Just give yourself a magic +1 weapon shield, stuff like that.
Oh, right. The repulsion shield, you get an extra +1 with the shield. It's got 4 charges, and you can use your reaction after being hit by a melee attack, expend a charge, and push the attacker up to 15 feet away. Yeah, that's pretty nice. So, I mean, that definitely works if you're going down the, as we talked, like the 2-level dip and a paladin. And I think what this comes down to is I would not want to play this multi-class in a campaign. But if somebody came to me and said, hey, we're playing a level 12 one-shot, and like I already have all of the pieces and I can like tweak it and put everything together, then I think that'd be pretty fun. But trying to like build up to this and having these mismatched stats that aren't really doing anything for me until I put, again, all of the puzzle pieces together, I think it would be really boring to play.
Yeah, a lot of dead levels.
If you did the Battlesmith thing we were talking about, where you're primarily Battlesmith and moving into Paladin later, I could see a first level Artificer that you take a 13 Strength and a 13 Charisma. You could still have your 16 Intelligence. You could still have a 14 Constitution. Once you get to level 3, that's always the unfortunate thing about Artificer, is that until you get your subclass, you're pretty lackluster. But once you get to level 3 and you get the Battlesmith abilities, I think you would do just fine. I don't think you would notice a significant difference from a Battlesmith who wasn't planning that multi-class. And then, once you got level 5, got your extra attack, you throw 2 levels of Paladin on at that point. I could see that working okay.
Yeah, that seems fair. So one very specific path forward. It's always what makes a good
Pretty
multi-class.
Wasn't the initial thing you suggested, Kevin? Battlesmith.
It's what we all came up with. Yeah. Battlesmiths, 2 Paladin.
These are not made in. This is not a match made in heaven. And no. But if you're to take a look through the garbage here and look for the trinket that's actually pretty good, that one is good enough to, I think, be a reasonably effective character.
Yeah, you're a Battlesmith who could smite, and your Artificer spells can fuel your smite, so it's not like you're gonna not have enough of those. If you start as Paladin, you have heavy armor, which is nice, though. Start as Artificer gives you the saving throw proficiency and con saves, which is probably better. But then again, if you're only using your spell slots to smite and not concentrating, I don't know, maybe it doesn't matter.
Main reason when I play a Paladin that I don't use Shield of Faith is because it's so hard to maintain concentration when you're playing I'll say the tank, but you're playing up in the martial business. So I could see having proficiency in that being really helpful.
Yeah, and that actually, there was something else I thought about. If you were to go half and halfsies, right? So you're going to have Paladin and Artificer. The one thing you would get is the greatest saving throws of all time for your entire party, because you would be combining your aura that you get from Paladin, along with a flash of genius you get from Artificer. So you could potentially add both your charisma bonus and your intelligence bonus to your own or a party member's saving throws.
Which I could see with that protector class idea. I think that would work really well. Which again, I think would be great if I was already starting at level 14 and I could just do 7/7. Great, let me put this together. But there would be a lot of times where you're just like, one day I'm going to feel very useful for saving throws. And up to that point, you made a character.
Yeah, I mean, and that is a common issue for a lot of builds. We because we're the multiclassing podcast, we do kind of gloss over that a lot, but a lot of these don't come on until, especially the trickier ones where it's not super obvious up front why they're great, don't come online until level 8, 9, and 10. And it's all right, so you're kind of...
Yeah, and if you want to combine Flash of Genius with the Paladin Aura, we're talking level 13.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jeez.
So
6, 7.
And even then, your charisma is not going to be super high, so you'll be giving,
Well, if you went Battlesmith, it could be. Let's say you play a UNT, right? And so you get a bonus to intelligence and charisma. You could have a 16 in each right to start.
Okay.
And still get a 14 Constitution. And because you're a Battlesmith, you don't need a lot of strength. Just 13. I'd have to work out the numbers, but right. I think you could do it. You might have to settle for a 12 con.
Yeah, and then obviously dump wisdom.
Oh yeah.
Dex.
You dump wisdom and
Dex
completely. Yeah.
Sorry, I was just like, all right, everybody, what characters are you coming with? All right, 6 Artificer, 7 Paladin, Yontai. Just no. Wait. I'll explain, please. It's like get.
I had a similar reaction in a campaign I recently joined where I'm playing a wizard paladin minotaur.
Blade Singer, or
wizard paladin minotaur.
What wizard subclass?
We are currently 3rd level, so I currently don't have subclasses in either. I'm Paladin 2, Wizard 1, but I will be going War Wizard and Conquest Paladin.
Okay.
Once again, I want the double dip, so to get the Paladin Aura along with Arcane Deflection.
Okay.
And basically can't fail a save.
I trust you to do this right somehow.
Yeah.
So far, it's worked quite well
Good.
at low level. Yeah.
And we've definitely talked before, and this isn't the Wizard Paladin episode, but whatever.
No.
We've definitely talked before about how even regardless of the subclass for Wizard, a small dip can be really useful because with Paladin, I mean, you're getting a level of full spellcaster, and you're getting 6 spells that can be used outside of combat, or more. I forget how many. Either way, and some ritual casting.
Adding shield on any character is always good.
Right. So
Yes.
it's definitely a lot. I am less confused than a 1-level dip into Artificer. That's for sure. It's to tie it back to the episode.
1-level dip in Artificer could get you kind of similar things. Definitely not as many spells known, but I mean, you still get yourself some armor, additional spells outside of combat, one of which could be shield, things like that. Keep in mind, they're kind of that odd half caster where it's round up instead of down.
I meant with Paladin specifically, though.
Oh, why would you go Artificer over Wizard?
Or a sorcerer.
Right.
Know.
Yeah.
If you just go for 1 dip, yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
The only reason would be to go for the Constitution save over Wizard, but over Sorcerer, it's really hard to think of why you would go Artificer. Certainly for a dip. There's no point in going 1-level dip with Artificer at all. And one thing we didn't mention too is Artificers have this thing where they have to use a spell focus for every spell they cast, whether it has a material component or not. And they have to use Thieves' Tools or Artificers or tools of another kind. I forget.
It can be
specifically.
Right.
It can be any tools, actually, as I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, any artisan tool.
Artisan.
It's
Thank you.
Tools
That's
in
the
your
word.
hands, yeah.
And so if you're using a Sword and Shield as a
Any
Paladin,
spell, yeah.
then that means basically you can't cast your Artificer spells while you are holding your sword.
Yeah, I missed that.
Yeah.
But that's, it clearly says it in hand when you, tool or some kind in hand when you cast any spell.
Yeah. So
That's nuts.
yeah, so even a verbal only spell, you would need to have a free hand.
Does Warcaster get around that?
Nope.
That's what I
Warcaster
figured.
does not get around a material component, and besides, it's specific beach general. So
Yeah, that's what I figured.
Because it says specifically you must, for an Artificer, you have to do this. There's just no way around it.
Yeah.
The only way around it is if you were to go more into Artificer. Then if you take an infusion that's a weapon, you can use it for a focus.
Right, okay.
Yeah, that's, I think, the intent for anyone who wants to do that, is you have to pursue that path.
Or you do the classic, and you're not sword and board, you don't have 2 hands, you're using a 2-handed weapon, which you can't swing with 1 hand, but if you're casting a spell, you may hold it with 1 hand while you do your crap with the other.
Yeah, I think if you're going primarily Paladin, you have to invest in 3 levels of Artificer. Well, if you're going Artificer, you only need to invest in 2 levels of Paladin to make it worthwhile.
Yeah.
But let's not forget the main reason anybody goes into Artificer, and that's magical tinkering. No one? Okay. It's like a souped up
A
cantrip.
little flavorful out of a little flavorful out of combat spell, but it's not worth chasing.
No.
Not worth going a level
Yeah,
4.
I mean, I don't dislike it. It's like a cleric with thaumaturgy.
Right.
Yeah.
It's tough getting a ribbon out of the gate, though. That's, I don't know. I question that decision, but...
It was because they get their spellcasting first level, unlike every other half-caster. I don't really agree with it.
I mean, that's why we called it like a 3/4 caster. It's not really a 3/4 caster, but it does pretend to be more than it is.
It's like a 5/8 caster.
Yeah. Unless you're doing a 1-level dip, it's a half caster.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's everything I have around the Paladin Artificer. Any other closing thoughts?
I think we deep dived that pretty far.
Yeah, as much as we possibly could have. So I'm proud of us for that. All right. Well then, before we get into our monster of the week, just have our promotional minute. Pinocchio minute.
We're going to get sued by Disney. Good job, Terry.
No. All right. If you do not, make sure to subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. Leave a review. They always help with other people trying to find us or who didn't know they wanted to find us until they did. Follow us on Twitter at Monsters_Multi and subscribe to our subreddit, which is our Monsters and Multiclass. And if you want to help support the show, we do have a link, just monstersandmulticlass.com/support. And you can help us out by joining our Patreon, buying dice from our dice affiliate, Metallic Dice Gaming, or Games. Oh man, I might have pronounced that one wrong. And buying merch, which we recently started as well, from Redbubble. Yeah, that's it. That's my best one in a while. Last time, I killed it. This one, not so great. So, sorry, everyone. Chris, if you want to one more time just say where people can find you, then we can move on and hide my shame.
Easily the best place to find me is just go to YouTube and type in Treantmonk's Temple. You can also find me on Twitter at Chris Honkala if you like.
Awesome. All right, so then with that, let's move on to the Rakshasa.
This episode's monster is the Rakshasa. If you are a dungeon master who wants to create a nice, evil, noble, or merchant, or powerful king, but you're thinking, you know what? How do I make this guy interesting? I can't just use the noble stat block. I need a demonic flesh-eating tiger with backwards hands. Well, guess what? I've got phenomenal news for you, because we're about to break down the Rakshasa. So what are you guys thinking about the Rakshasa?
This is definitely a weird one. I've seen this picture a bunch, just like going through the monster manual or basic rules. It's technically like in the basic rules. And I always went right past it. I saw the name, I saw the picture, which looks like at a glance just a humanoid tiger. And I assumed it was just kind of like a crappy one-off NPC. Like maybe in past editions there was all this lore about this Rakshasa race of these tiger people, and in 5th edition they condensed it down to a one-off NPC. And that's it. But no, it's a flesh-eating, challenge-rating 13 fiend with backward hands and shape-shifting abilities. It's fucking weird.
The backwards hands seem to come out of nowhere.
Right? Yeah.
I'm not going to lie. So when I first read this, I was looking at this picture for like a solid 5 minutes and then putting my hand in various forms, because he's smoking a pipe. Like he's gripping this pipe, and I'm like,
right? Like,
does this picture indicate his hands are backwards? I have not concluded either way, but it says so in the flavor text.
Yeah, the picture's not in enough definition to really tell. I mean, he could just be holding the pipe, you know. So I'm not sure, but one thing I do think is these are definitely an interesting creature. They're, technically speaking, they're supposed to be devils that, in order to escape the hells, have taken this form so that they can basically cause havoc on our plane. They tend to hide their identities, so you're seldom going to see them in their, tiger, humanoid, half, backward hand form. You're going to generally see them in some kind of humanoid form that blends in. They have spell-like abilities that are going to help them in that regard. They can disguise self at will. They can detect thoughts at will. And plus, they have a number of enchantment abilities. So I think in terms of flavor, these things are lovely. In terms of mechanics, challenge rating 13 is a very strange number for what we see on the page.
Yeah, definitely going to agree.
For sure.
And let's get into that stat block too. So, as you mentioned, it's challenge rating 13 with an armor class, natural armor of 16 and 110 hit points. As Chris said, it's a spellcaster, so that's pretty in line, I'd say. Really good stats.
It's pretty low.
It's low. It's low.
You know how you look at the picture and you go, that kind of looks like a were-tiger.
Yeah.
Well, a were-tiger has more hit points in his challenge rating 4.
Wow. Okay, yeah, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
But again, that's normal, at least that spellcasters have crazy low HP, or at least surprisingly low. Now, I still agree with you. Challenge rating 13 seems odd because I don't think the spells really line up with what we're looking at here.
No.
I will say the stats, just like straight stats, are really good. It's got a plus in everything, +2 strength, +3 dex, +4 con, +1 int,
and no saving
wisdom,
throw proficiencies.
But no saving throw proficiencies.
Yeah.
Now, that said, I don't know how many saving throws it's really going to be making because of its one quite interesting ability, limited magic immunity. And for that, the Rakshasa can't be affected or detected by spells of 6th level or lower. unless it wants to be. And it still has advantage on saving throws against all other spells and magical effects. So as long as the saving throw is magical in nature, even if it's above 6th level, it still has, mathematically speaking, +5 on top of whatever it has from the advantage. So I'm sure that's the reason why there wasn't additional pluses to the saving throws, but I still think it's a little weird when we're talking about a challenge rating 13 creature.
Right. And then it's also completely immune to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing from non-magical attacks.
Yeah. Now, I would imagine if you're fighting a challenge rating 13 creature, you can get around the non-magical attacks. I would hope so, because you probably fought lower challenge rating creatures, like the Were-Tiger at challenge rating 4 that's immune to non-magical attacks.
Maybe, because challenge rating 13, I could definitely see putting a party of level 7s at that. Yeah. And in my games, not everyone is going to have a magical weapon at level 7. But I am a very stingy person when it comes to magical items. So
yeah, if my DM hasn't given me a magical weapon by level 5, I'll take care of that myself. Right? I'll dip Forge Cleric or something.
Oh, I thought you were going to beat up your DM.
You won't give me a magical weapon. I'll give myself a magical weapon.
That sounded
okay.
Yeah,
that's the civil kind of passive way to do it. You can also just beat up your DM.
But so I really think that if you're facing this, you're likely to have magical weapons. One thing I do think is really unusual here is they have the damage vulnerability of piercing from magic weapons wielded by good creatures. Now, the thing I find really odd here is, as far as I know, certainly as far as I can think of right now, this is the only case in the entire game where I can think of alignment actually being a mechanical effect on the game. In all other cases, it seems they've gone to painstaking lengths to ensure that alignment doesn't affect, protection from good and evil, detect evil, all those things no longer are related to alignment at all. The designers talk about alignment being an optional rule. You don't need to have it on your character sheet. But here we have an actual mechanical benefit to being good.
Yeah, I think there might be a very small handful of magic items that use it as well, but definitely. For sure, I really cannot think of.
A lot of campaigns and material like that will have like an element, a thing that will screw with your alignment. But as far as like core source books, having a damage vulnerability to piercing from magic weapons wielded by good creatures is an incredibly unique sentence.
And it's so specific.
It also means the ranger's going to kill this thing on round 1.
Oh,
finally.
Right? Because Hunter's Mark just adds to the base damage of the weapon, so that's going to be doubled as well. And then you have a Gloomstalker. A level 3 Gloomstalker is going to kill this thing, potentially on its first turn, but that it had advantage on the initiative roll for.
Yeah. I assume it has a magic weapon, but for sure.
Yeah.
Which, again, not campaign dependent. I mean, this whole creature seems really campaign dependent, and everything about its design and flavor feels old. Like old school. Really early on D&D, where they're just kind of throwing some weird shit in because it's different. Like, oh, it's a devil, but it's like a tiger person, and its hands are backwards. Why is its hands backwards? Like, the hands are backwards, man. It's neat. It's quirky. It's got backward hands. Like, that feels like really kind of old sort of. I'm not trying to like insult any designers here, but almost like it kind of an immature approach to designing a monster. It's just like, you just kind of throw in random shit and do it because it's different.
I know there's a mythology base for this, but I don't know the details of the mythology. So maybe that's somehow involved in something from the mythology.
I was saying, actually, as I was saying that, I was thinking like, oh, did I just offend some?
I am not an expert
very clear mythology around this
in Hinduism, but I did look at the Wikipedia for at least 10 minutes before we started this podcast. So it is like a thing that in Hindu mythology was created in a story involving Vishnu, I believe. Was said something weird in his sleep, and it became Rakshasas. But the only thing that has anything in common with this is they eat flesh and they have fangs. And then it's a tiger. I guess that's just like referencing India. It really just does seem like a grab bag of, I don't know, man, make it a tiger. Let's steal a word. And then his hands are backwards.
The Taco Bell menu item of D&D monsters.
Yeah.
And if you look at the abilities and everything, you would kind of think that as a DM, if you were going to use this, you would be thinking this is going to be like the power behind the scenes, the big, intelligent bad guy with a 13 intelligence.
It's
its
Beholder,
lowest ability score is intelligence.
Yeah. There are so many different monsters better suited for that role. That's for sure.
Yeah.
It is a very crowded space.
That actually almost lends itself kind of well to this being a very incompetent big bad evil guy. Like the charisma's 20. That's nothing to scoff at. But I don't know. He could be a really
that
sucky
challenge rating
mini-boss.
13 really throws me off too.
Well, let's even look at the spells. Let's talk about what it's got, because I think that really to me screams a specific playstyle. So at will it has Detect Thoughts, Disguise Self, Mage Hand, and Minor Illusion. And then 3 times a day it can do Charm Person, Detect Magic, Invisibility, Major Image, and Suggestion. And then once per day we've got Dominate Person, Fly, Plane Shift, and True Seeing. To me, this screams a monster that's main goal is to run away and use other people to its advantage. Fighting this thing one-on-one is going to be extremely boring. It's going to be extremely easy, and overall just not going to be a good time. I don't even see why this thing would want to stick around and fight, though. To me, I see it casting a spell like Dominate Person on the Barbarian and having it attack the rest of the party while it just turns invisible and runs away. I'm not saying that justifies the challenge rating. I think we can all agree it's kind of silly. But from a playstyle perspective, it's not going to be the big bad evil guy that you fight at the end. It's supposed to be the thing that's just trying everything in its power to not go back to the 9 hells. Because that is its main motivation, is stay alive so that you don't go back to the 9 hells where it's a terrible, terrible existence. I again, don't think the challenge rating is justified, but the play style is not going to be a straight-up fight.
I mean, yeah, especially if we start looking at its damage attack. Because you look at these, like, any monster that has Fly and then has nothing to do while flying, it starts to be obvious why they have that spell.
Yeah, the Claw, +7 to hit, 2d6 plus 2 damage, that's 9 damage, challenge rating 13.
Yep.
Yeah.
But wait.
Well, and then the curse, which is weird. So if they hit, there's no roll or anything. You're just immediately cursed. And you can gain no benefit from finishing a short or long rest. It's a remove curse spell will.
Yeah. And how will a party that can take on a challenge rating 13 creature find a remove curse spell?
Right. And because of that...
Yeah, it's type of thing. Like, if your party doesn't have that for whatever reason, if you don't have a cleric, paladin, warlock, or wizard... to be fair, if you're like a warlock or wizard, you have to pick it and learn it, and you might have skipped that. But cleric and paladins, give me a day, I'll prepare it tomorrow. If you don't have it, it's kind of interesting. I'm not 100% sure what the ramifications are on sleep. I would kind of take it as meaning like you really don't get to sleep during your long rest, and so you also start building up levels of exhaustion,
Definitely.
which gets really dangerous really quick. It's not completely clear on that, though, because then there's arguments for well, it says you don't get the benefits from finishing a short or long rest, but then there's bills like the coffee lock, which argue, no, sleep and long rests are separate, and like there is some internal logic to that. Like, I don't like the coffee lock, but that's where you basically have infinite spells because you never take a long rest and just don't reset them. But
well, once again, I don't think that this is meant to be a challenge to your level 10 party. The point of this is that it allows the Rakshasa to attack normal people, not adventurers, wear them down, and kill them in the most opportune way. It's not going to be to ruin your party's day. This is a flavorful monster. It is not a difficult monster.
Yeah, and
Right.
but the strange thing for me is just the challenge rating.
Right.
Right? I actually think it's an interesting monster. It's just its challenge rating has been set wrong. Because, I mean, by definition, challenge rating means this is supposed to be a challenge for your level 10 party.
Well, I think that's what they've said that it's a limited system and there's no way to do it perfectly. And I think this is a good example of where the challenge rating is more of a warning flag than anything else. Because imagine you are fighting this Rakshasa at a lower level because your DM saw the stats and was like, my party's going to blow this guy up. And they don't have magic weapons. And they can't cast anything over 6th level.
Let's talk about spell casting against this thing. So, would we agree that if you cast a spell like a, fireball, clearly it's not going to work?
Right.
What about a wall of force? Can it move through a wall of force?
Is that 6th level?
That's a good question.
And I would say it can't.
I would agree with that.
Right, because it'd be ignoring a it's the spell isn't cast at the Rakshasa. If that's the case, then something like a Circle the Shepherd Druid will tear this thing up. Right? You can cast Conjure Animals. Their attacks are treated as magical. Boom. Right? There is this misconception that immunity to spells means that spellcasters suddenly become useless. That's not true. Spellcasters can get around. They certainly can get around legendary resistance. They can get around magic resistance, and they can get around even magical immunity by having other things that they create with their magic or do with their magic that affect the creature, right? So they work indirectly.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I guess it never really clearly lays out what can't be affected means, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean...
I could see some DMs arguing, or players trying to argue, that, no, it can walk through the wall of force. I agree. I think
How about the wall of stone?
But I could see the argument.
Yeah, well, again,
Right?
that would be my next argument I would make if they say it can walk through a wall of force. Can it walk through a wall of stone? Well, the person's still concentrating on it. At that point, it's still a magical effect. Does that make sense, right?
Yeah, well, I like if you were doing Wall of Fire, where this is a damaging item, then maybe all right. It doesn't matter because you are making that saving throw to take damage. But completely ignoring the existence of magic because you casted it at 4th level.
It's truly not an immunity to magic. If it was an immunity to magic, magic weapons wouldn't work against it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's limited magic.
Yeah, it is a weird design voice. Is there any other monster that has that? It feels familiar.
Tarrasque.
Well, anything that can do a globe of invulnerability has that.
Yeah.
So the Tarrasque and a very, very powerful spell.
Yeah. Oh, I think Tiamat has that. They could choose to just not be affected by anything like under 7th or whatever. Just challenge rating 30.
So what you're saying is this creature, the Rakshasa, is basically a challenge rating 30?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying.
What challenge rating would you guys put it at? If you were to, if a designer put this on your table and the challenge rating was blank, where would you think the challenge rating would be?
9. But I know that's
4.
Even then,
put on level maybe 5.
I would go above 4. I think maybe 7.
Yeah.
Maybe 7.
I'd still put it at like 9, just as kind of a warning. I don't know. There's as a designer, as a challenge rating chooser, quote unquote, you do have to just address impossible numbers of variables. And for some parties, this would be an impossible fight. They just wouldn't have the resources to do anything.
Dominate person and then plane shift can really ruin a party's day, because that plane shift is not limited to self.
That'd be a really mean thing to do.
Yeah, it would be.
Oh, just steal a party member?
Well, no, plane shift, all creatures have to be willing.
Isn't there...
You can't use plane shift offensively.
You can use this spell to banish an unwilling creature to another plane. Choose a creature with...
One creature,
right, single,
but then you're not doing yourself anymore.
That's totally fine, but it's not concentration, so you can get rid of one party member just right out the gate, and they probably don't have a way back at lower levels.
And then you have used up your only escape.
Except for in Fly, and kind of. I mean, I agree to a large extent, but if the party is focused on the fact that the Barbarian is now raging against them, and the Cleric, who could easily get rid of this charm, is now just gone, that might be scary. Especially when... I was saying, considering the fact that we also should expect minions, I could see throwing some lesser demons on top of it, or devils.
Yeah, or just people that this thing is manipulated. But then that's just kind of like a poorly designed fight. It's not fun for the players. Half the party's just out of it. They just sit back
Barbarian, you get to do nothing. Cleric, you have to walk 7,000 miles through the elemental plane of fire to get home.
I don't disagree.
Yeah.
Right. I'm using that to justify a higher challenge rating, though.
And this, let's talk about, this is not necessarily an easy thing for this thing to set up. In order to do the plane shift, it has to attack somebody in melee, hit with a +7 to hit, and then they get a saving throw, right? So a lot of things have to go right for that plane shift to work offensively.
One small tweak, it would be plus 10 to hit. And then it is, because there's a
melee spell, yeah.
Because it's a melee spell type.
Okay.
But,
spell.
And then it's a DC 18, what is it, charisma saving throw? That's pretty high.
I mean, it's not an easy save, but nevertheless.
Right,
I mean,
I agree.
Yeah. And again, same thing with the dominate person. You can't count on that working.
Nope.
Right? It might work. Right? And that's 2 rounds of setup. Right? I mean, if a party just stands there and lets an enemy have round after round of doing stuff to them without, easily killing them, then pretty much any creature's going to have a significantly higher challenge rating.
Yeah. No, that's perfectly fair.
Yeah.
And honestly, the idea of this thing lasting 2 rounds is kind of the hard part.
Yeah.
Yeah. Keep in mind, though, it's not going to be the type of thing where you come across a Rakshasa standing there in the room in a dungeon and you fight. It's going to be a setup. It's going to have a bunch of minions. It could play it where you don't even know it's an enemy at first. Like, you think it's on your side, and then out of nowhere, it plane shifts away one of your party members and then turns invisible and comes out of nowhere and breaks invisibility by casting Dominate Person. Oh, well, you're busy with its minions and stuff like that.
Now, of course, if you're adding minions, then that doesn't add to the challenge rating of the creature.
No. Oh, for sure. I'm just talking about ways to use it. So I find weird about challenge rating, though. No, well, you said, like, challenge rating chooser. It's like, my understanding is that's not how it works. There's a really clear-cut formula in the DMG of how you come across challenge rating. And it's taking defensive abilities and offensive abilities, average damage and health, and you get it from that. But I feel like this one had to just be a manual override.
Yeah.
I don't know the formula off the top of my head, but I cannot imagine plugging its health, AC, and offensive capabilities and it popping out at 13.
Well, what's happening is there's little abilities in there that are bumping up the challenge rating, and they're piling on top of each other, so that you end up. I'm sure that the Magic community has massively pumped up its challenge rating when because it's not combined with the right things. Yeah, the DMG has a specific guidelines, and we see it time and time again where it doesn't work. Right, and this is one of those cases, and I agree. That's the whole point of it being a published material with playtesters and a team of designers, that they have an advantage over, if I do a homebrew monster, that they have all these minds and all this experience and all this chance to try stuff out. They should be able to take a look at this and go, okay, this just isn't a challenge for that kind of party. We need to make an adjustment.
I'll agree.
Right. Yeah, so I pulled up the table here. There's a table, and it's like saying roughly where things should be at. Challenge rating 13, armor class of 18, 251 to 265 hit points, damage around 81 to 86.
This one gets 9.
Well, this one does 9, but it has multi-attack, so that's 18.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, when you say they have, like, this system, I mean, they have it. It's just not... It's not very rigid. And this is
also
a very obvious exception.
I will also say that maybe I'm just nice. I give a lot of slack for Monster Manual monsters. I feel like there's a lot of these mistakes from our Lost conversations. We talked about the Intellect Devourer, which is a total design oversight that we won't get too into for the future when we talk about it. But there was a lot of mistakes, I feel like, in the Monster Manual that aren't really worth them going back and correcting. But I feel like monster design in more recent releases, Mordenkainen's and Volo's, are much more interesting as well as just better. I don't see these types of things as often.
For sure. And I think a lot of, especially from like the basic rules and original Monster Manual, a lot of them are just holdouts. They were kind of put in because, these monsters are always here and this is how they are, and so we did it. Yeah. The fact that this has something that uses alignment, I think really speaks towards that, because the designers themselves, the creators of D&D, have said over and over and over, yeah, we kind of just put alignment in because people expect it. It's just sort of like a tradition that's been a holdover, but we kind of removed all its teeth. But like, here's a monster that actually gives it some of its teeth back, which is just another thing where I think it was an old one and they put it in because it's always in.
With all of that said, this is probably not going to be an amazing fight, but once your party kills it, that's not the end of things. Because what happens is the Rakshasa will go back down to the 9 hells, while on the material plane, its body reforms, which the party's probably not going to know. And when it comes back, it wants revenge. And it might take it out on the party, but most likely it's going to recognize that the party is way too powerful for it. And it's just going to go and start killing your friends and family. That's like specifically in the text, is that it goes and tries to ruin the lives of whoever killed it in the first place. So, no, it's not going to be very hard to fight the first time. But once it comes back and starts making sure all of the PCs are orphans if they weren't before, it is now going to have to be you killing it again and then going to the 9 hells to completely slay it. And that, again, doesn't justify the challenge rating, but it does make it a very interesting further use of this creature. It should not be just a one-off.
Right, or it gives you good framework to build a quest around. You know, people are dying in this town and no one's sure why, and it's not going to be immediately obvious. It's I can never say it. Rakshasa.
You gotta do it like you're too sassy for it, Kevin.
Rakshasa. Yeah.
I definitely think this is something
Doing this.
a DM could use in a campaign as a reoccurring villain, right? And because it can disguise itself, because it can integrate itself, it could be something that you come across again and again. And each time you discover it and you defeat it, then it just turns up again like, you know, like a bad rash, right? And you could really build that whole animosity with the party over an entire campaign.
Right. So what seems like a large final fight is really the start of many more that it's going to be more prepared for in the future with minions, where the fight with the Rakshasa, once again, isn't really the important part. It's going to be the fact that it has, you know, some challenge rating 15 devils, that are much more equipped to fight you. Or you have to go into the 9 hells, which is its own awful experience that the party now has to figure out how to get down there. And then once they're down there, they have to fight way more things that are going to be much more deadly. And then, you know, find this creature, which I don't even know how anyone would do that. But I guess a locate creature spell would probably help.
I think there's a directory.
Yeah.
Well, I would imagine the 9 hells would. I wouldn't trust the directory in the Abyss, but the 9 hells, I'm sure everything is cataloged very carefully.
Right.
In duplicate.
The devil yellow pages. It's fine.
I could see that being a really bad devil project. Someone was trying to get to devil management, so they came up with like busy work of making a fake directory to confuse adventurers.
Well, you have the punished souls have to work in the in the registry.
I like it.
I need to look up a devil. Who do you know?
Do you have a number?
Yeah. They look back at the filing cabinets that stacked like 1,000 high. I need the ladder.
I always have mixed feelings about like extra goofy D&D, but like 9 hells, but like Monsters Inc. Thematically Monsters Inc. style. There's probably a campaign to run there.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah.
The party killed me again. Did you file your paperwork?
Any other...
I will say this. My joking intro aside, this is a really easy thing to just kind of shoehorn into your evil noble. If you're not worried about the fight with this guy and more worried with the plot, this guy's got a lot of stuff. Half his spells are out of combat stuff, and even his horrible melee attack, the curse actually does have something interesting. What I would say is that something like, I don't know, maybe to make it more plausible, greater invisibility, if you tacked that on, he could curse a bunch of people and nobody would know where it came from. So there's stuff you can do, but
right.
Yeah, battle-wise, he really not the interesting part of this particular guy.
No, yeah, and I thought that was really weird, like not having greater invisibility on this. That just seems a lot more fitting to me than being able to go invisible for a single instance.
Yeah, not like it would have broken the character.
No, right.
No, they could have gone, there's not a lot of spells here, right? It kind of presents as a spellcaster, but if you look, the list isn't very long, especially considering the challenge rating.
Right, and I think that's actually the one thing that I would do to make this a little bit better is just throw on some damage spells. I mean, health too, most likely, but definitely some damage spells just to give it something interesting to do in a fight. I can talk about how the fight isn't actually the fun of this creature for hours, I'm sure, but realistically speaking, if I was throwing this in and expecting a challenge rating 13, I'd be adding spells, I'd be adding health, and I'd be adding minions, obviously.
I wouldn't mind seeing a fear spell on there.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yep.
yeah.
Agreed. All right, any other thoughts on the Rakshasa?
That's it from me.
No.
All right. And that brings us to the end of our episode. Thank you so much, Chris, for joining us. And I don't know, hope to talk to you again sometime, maybe.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's been great. Thanks for listening.
Next time on Monsters and Multiclass.
Join us as we discuss the Barbarian Wizard multiclass and then the Manticore from the Monster Manual. And probably some question, because how long can we really talk about the Barbarian Wizard? We'll find out.